welcome everyone. We're just about to launch into another Tavern Talks, and I've got two wonderful guests with me. They're going to introduce themselves shortly, and there you have us. So yeah, in case anyone's new around here, Tavern Talks are our weekly, mostly weekly, talk show on all things D&D and tabletop RPG related. And yeah, you're more than welcome to ask questions in chat, and we'll get to them as soon as we humanly can. Like I said, I've got two wonderful people with me today. Typo, let's start with you. Who are you? What do you do? And where can people find you?
Well, first off, I'd like to know where the second wonderful person is, but hello, I'm Type-O. Glad to be here. I've done a little bit of streaming on another channel, playing a character called Explosive and stream. Sorry, I was just watching the stream and it stopped for a second.
Oh, is it back? I didn't get a notification that it was dropping.
Okay, it's good.
It's back. We're back.
Sorry.
Got me off guard.
It's been raining today, so my internet is slightly upset about it. Because Australia. Yeah.
Just finishing off. I've been playing D&D for over 5 years now, and know the system pretty well, so I feel I have a little bit of advice to offer.
Excellent.
Passing it off to?
So I'm ArcadeF0x. You guys know me pretty well. If you don't know me, check out at ArcadeF0x on Twitter with a 0 and Fox because people. I am now kind of starting to get myself all over on various places for, or at least locking in shows for this year. And I do a little bit of disability advocacy over at Roll for Fun, and yeah, I've been playing tabletop games for 20 years, so I'm old. So yay me.
Yeah. That's
He is the old
a
guard.
nice way to wrap that up. I was like expecting an added statement there, but
No, I'm just old.
Alright, so the bit rate is thankfully stabilizing by the looks of things, so shouldn't, fingers crossed, have any more drops like that. Yeah, I'm Polished. If you're watching the stream, you are watching my channel. I do a lot of tabletop related things, whether it's campaigns, one-shots, or these Tavern Talks. And these are two of the faces you'll see around here as well. You need to have, that's not translating into emotes for some reason.
Oh.
I think the one you modified is gone now.
You mean that one?
Yeah. And additionally, you can also find me on Roll for Damage on Tuesday evenings, Australian time, playing in their Call of Cthulhu campaign as an investigative journalist called Hazel McGrath. Oh yeah, I also do other types of streaming when I can't be bothered, but it's a lot of role-playing stuff on here. Today's topic is about multiclassing. Something that people have a tendency to either love or hate. Typo is very firmly in one corner on that. So, firstly, if someone goes like, "Hey, what's multiclassing?" How would you describe it?
Typo, go ahead and take it away, since you spend the most time multiclassing.
Well, taken from the Latin root multi, it means to a plurality of something, and classing, as well as D&D refers to taking a level in a class. So multi-classing, as you understand it,
God
is
damn
taking
it.
multiple classes. It's
I
when
mean,
you take
could have
multiple
had my
classes in D&D.
definition.
You can play a fighter with several levels in a fighter and decide at some point that you'd like to study as a wizard as well and take a level as that. allow.
Mhm.
So you could have 4 levels of fighter and then a additional level of wizard, and you would be a 5th level character
Yeah.
altogether.
Cool. When you guys play, do you normally have there's a maximum number of classes you can dabble in for one character?
Um,
I'm not sure what the official
Yeah.
rules are in that, but I know a lot of tables have rules for it.
I don't think there is an official rule.
The official rules are when you run out of levels and classes you can take.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I think it really depends DM-wise as far as their table and being like, one, do they allow multi-classing? Because some tables do not. And two, if they do, how many classes can you take up before they absolutely hate you? But yeah, like I think there is no official rule as far as the number of classes you can be.
I personally find that as someone who multiclasses a lot, if a DM is okay with multiclassing, 2 is a safe number. 3 is usually okay as well. If you're going 4, they're going to start looking at you like you have 5 heads. So try to avoid going to 4. Probably stick to 2.
Yeah, I'd say, and also just for your personal sanity, I wouldn't recommend having more than 2, possibly 3 in very rare scenarios.
Yeah.
I think after 4, it's going to be very, very hard to keep track of. One thing that I've forgotten to mention, which is insane because I'm looking straight at it, because Australia is still on fire, we are continuing our efforts to raise funds for WWF Australia. We had a wonderfully successful Christmas campaign. Once again, thank you so much to everyone who donated for that. We'll be having donations open, but we're also planning to do separate charity streams that are specifically designed with incentives and things like that to make the experience a bit more fun for our donors. So yeah, we've got that going on today. So how much, just so our viewers know, what experience do you guys have with multiclassing? We've heard that Type-O's into it, but that's pretty much the extent of it so far.
You go first, Fox.
Definitely not as much as Type-O. I mean, I have multi-class, but if anything, my multi-classing is not 3, 4, 5 classes. It is 2 classes, because that is all I really want to do. And primarily it is, I take a class and I add Bard, and that is it.
Right, Type-O. I know this is part of one of your things with D&D is your love of multiclassing.
Yes. By the way, Bard is a wonderful multi-class. It goes with almost everything, so good choice. My experience with multiclassing, I don't think I've ever played a character that was not multiclassed, that wasn't explicitly a completely homebrew class. Even the first one I played. So, yeah, a little bit of experience.
Little bit, just something you dabble in now and then.
Something I dabbled in, yes.
Now, Type-O, with you saying that your first class ever was a multi-class.
Holy crap, okay.
Or your first character, do you suggest that it be something that new people try?
We'll get to that point. I should also say that
10 miles ahead.
Yeah, I send Fox a list every time. He ignores it every time. So, Jim Brady just mentioned that they used to multiclass a lot, but that their current DM doesn't allow it. And I'd say most of the DMs that I've come across do allow it, but it's more that they look at you like, Okay, we're doing this. So I'd say there's definitely a lot of like different GM attitudes towards
Mm-hmm.
multiclassing. So I'd always recommend like checking with your GM before like being dead set. Like I am going to multiclass no matter what. Because yeah,
Mhm.
again, uh, it's something that a GM might also have the I don't allow new players to multiclass asterisks
Mhm.
added. Um,
It's for GMs. It's just a lot more for them to keep track of as
yeah.
far as generally, if you play one class and you got, 4 people playing at your table, you
Mm,
can keep track of who's got what up and, whatnot. When you have a multi-class, sometimes you don't think about that second class and you're just like,
mm,
oh, yeah, you do have that. Well, my plan went out the window.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I forgot to mention my experience with multiclassing. I do it occasionally. I've got one of the characters on one of our streamed campaigns, Anairos in the Evil 5th Edition campaign, is a multi-class character. We'll also be seeing another one that is in the works, and I've also got a wizard slash rogue that I play off stream. So thank you so much for the follow, John Betty. Brady. Gosh, missed that last time. Um, so this is gonna be a broad question with the two of you. What are the pros and cons of multiclassing in general?
Typo, take it away.
You ever look at that sweet feature at level 6 and go, oh yeah, I so want to get that feature? Well, every time you read your class, you're just going to say level 6, you're going to look at it and you remind yourself, oh, it's level 7 for me, because I multi-class too early.
Yes.
The other
Mhm.
problems will be your spell power will generally get if you multi-class, you generally get a little bit weaker with what each class does for obvious reasons. And if you do it before 5th level, especially, you can really shoot yourself in the foot because there is the book doesn't tell you this, but there is a significant power spike from level 4 to
Mm.
5. Fighters get basically an extra attack, so they double their damage output. Wizards go from going 15-foot cone of 3d6 damage to giant 20-foot radius sphere,
Mm.
150 feet away, 8d6 damage.
Yeah.
So,
And I'd say another, like, again, one of my characters is a sorcerer warlock. Keeping track of which spell belongs to which casting class and
Mhm.
separating things like pact slots and spell slots can be an absolute pain to do. So it's just like, obviously there are classes that are more straightforward than others, but when you then
Mhm.
do what I did and decide to multi-class into pretty complicated ones,
mm-hmm.
it can be a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
Um,
So for me on the pro side is like one, there's a lot more things you can actually do as a character.
mm,
And two, it allows for a lot more role playing avenues.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On the DM side, things get really complicated really fast for people.
Mm,
Uh, in the sense of like, if you multi-classed as a wizard and let's just say a wild magic sorcerer, right?
oh.
Right. Yeah. No.
Dude.
No. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh huh. You have to make sure everybody understands that if you cast a spell as a wizard, it will never trigger wild magic. Whereas
Mm,
if you cast a spell as a sorcerer, it'll potentially trigger wild magic, and that's because your spells for wizard and sorcerer are
mm,
totally separate.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
um, and it can kind of throw off how you do things with spell combinations as far as
Mm.
things that involve concentration, things that don't, and keeping track of a
Yeah.
lot more things.
Um,
Yeah.
I think one of the pros is again like being able to tie it into the story really well,
Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
if something really significant happens in game, being able to reflect that mechanically is something that I personally see as one of the biggest advantages of multiclassing, is that you can feel that change that happened. Whether that's,
Yeah.
you know, what happens when a paladin breaks their oath and then go like, I need to find something else to do with my life. Or,
Mhm.
you know, change of loyalties. And yeah, it's just really nice to have something that actually goes from story and into mechanics
Mhm.
by design.
Like for instance, if you're a ranger and you went off and did something while everybody was just kind of sleeping for the night, or you visited by a patron in the night,
Mm.
when you hit that next level, you may have become a partial warlock, you know, and it may fit very well into the story, but it's just like
Mm-hmm.
it gives you those extra avenues to bring it into the role-playing world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one of the pros that was covered was somewhat covered by. You do get a lot more options as a fighter. You can take some wizard levels or something like that to get some like ranged options, or if like you're a melee character normally, or even as it's good for utility casters. Because one of my earlier characters was a wizard and a warlock, and the mixture of the invocations, the pack slots, the wizard spells, and their ability to record a whole bunch of stuff,
Mm.
I ended up with like 20 different spells at like level 4. And that also becomes a problem because you're sitting there, it comes your turn.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Let me shuffle through all of my notes. I would like to cast this spell, and then I can mix this spell too, I think, actually.
Yeah.
So
It's
and another thing,
yep.
it does not work well with damage dealing cast. If you want to go for raw damage output, you're generally best off just sticking with a full class of like sorcerer or warlock, because you lose some of your firepower by multiclassing.
Something I will say is that for sorcerers, we'll get to this when we talk about this particular combination of sorcerer and warlock. But as a table or house ruling, whether you're allowed to convert other types of spell slots into sorcery points is something that can really influence that. Because if so, you might not necessarily have to sacrifice that firepower. But your GM will also hate you. So there's a lot of like, what happens if I do this type discussions you need to have with your GM about the mechanics of this game. Or of this character, I should say, because they interact in really, really weird ways, and you want that to be clarified before you find yourself in a position where something just blows up in your face, pretty much. So it requires more planning and more talking. So therefore I wouldn't recommend it in a scenario where like for a shorter campaign, like if you're only playing a handful of sessions together, I personally wouldn't introduce a new type of class in that. So I wouldn't, unless the character was built to be multi-class from the start with the GM's blessing. If you're only going to level up once or twice, then I probably wouldn't introduce a new class in that particular scenario, but that's one of a few times where I'm like, yeah, probably not worth it.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just one of those that if it's a shorter campaign, I probably will just stick to one class just to keep it easy, quick, and simple. Or, in my opinion, for my personal opinion, for newer players, I will at least restrict them to, you know, learn how to play through your first 2 levels. If you enjoy your character after the first 2 levels and you want to multi-class into something, great, go for it. But I want you to use the first 2 levels to learn the mechanics of the game.
Yeah. And and it's just ironic that we're saying this because Type-O's sitting over there going like, we built a multi-class character for a one-shot and gave it to you polished. And it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
Yeah, no, it can absolutely be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, any other pros and cons?
You should know what you're doing before doing that, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've got some odd rules with multi-classing, but we can do that later.
Okay, I'd say
Just interactions of things.
another pro aspect, I think, is that it can be incredibly useful for the party as a whole. That, someone being able to pick up a few extra healing spells can be incredibly versatile. Even just, the right cantrip can make a big difference. Again, someone who, if you manage to somehow multi-class monk with literally anything castery, you now have someone with unarmored defense, which is going to be crucial to you as a spellcaster if you can't wear armor. So there's a lot of ways to make yourself very, very useful very, very quickly with multi-classing. And it also allows for interesting combinations and just all-out fun. It can be a great way also to dabble into a new class if you don't want to commit fully. If you're intimidated by, again, playing a cleric the entire way because clerics are complicated, then having another base level and then taking 1 or 2 levels in cleric to get that utility without having to commit to it fully can absolutely be a good sort of stepping stone if you're comfortable with multi-classing and those mechanics. Anything else on the pros and cons? Also, my freaking bitrate is arguing. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on.
I think those are most the major pros and cons that I can think of off the head.
Cool. So, next thing. What are some etiquette issues or just sort of table manners, so to speak, that you need to keep in mind when multi-classing? I know you wanted to talk about this, Type-O.
Something I personally feel is important when you multi-class. If you multi-class, keep in mind that one of the reasons that some GMs ban it is multi-classing is one of the easier ways to start to break the game. 3.5, especially people from the 3.5 era especially are aware of how more and more options will eventually group up together to make a better strategy than simply following the pre-written routes. And this can get out of hand if you don't use or you aren't responsible. So if your DM lets you multi-class, keep that in mind that it is a gift and not a right, and do not abuse it. Don't go for cheaty builds like the Coffee Lock or the Hexblade Palabard unless you first clear it by your DM and he's aware of it and goes okay, you know what, you can have fun with that one. So there are a few builds you can find online, and make sure to if you feel like it might be a little bit cheaty, run it by the DM first. Run it by the other players first, possibly. And if you do end up a little bit stronger than the other players, maybe consider holding back a little bit.
I think that's also an important thing in D&D in general. Sometimes just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do that at every opportunity. Both as a player and as a GM for that matter. That, it's a sort of give everyone the time to shine kind of thing. And if you're always the person like killing the big bad, if you're always the person solving every investigation, maybe, you know, hand over the spotlight, and, you know, stop being an attention whore.
And another one. If your DM remember that your DM's a player too, and sometimes he likes to have fun. So if he has a big boss, maybe be nice to the big boss and don't immediately one-shot it with some cheap move on the first turn. Unless he really deserves it.
They'll get payback on you.
They will.
Every now and then, those things can be fun though. Like, provided you don't do it too often.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's the same thing as one of the druid spells that breaks the game by summoning a bunch of by a bunch of fairies. You can dish out a ridiculous amount of damage with a particular strategy. And it is glorious, but if you do that more than once, for some reason the fairies are no longer going to be willing to deal with you because the GM has had enough.
or the next time you cast a spell, all you get are these turtles for some reason. I don't know why.
So
only turtles ever.
Yeah. Don't exploit things too much when you're multiclassing. Same thing. You'll probably find that multiclassing is often where homebrew really starts to happen. In that it's about like, how do we mitigate this? Is this character too strong or not strong enough? Do we have to dial back some of these features? You'll see a lot of that happening with multiclassing. Yeah.
Oh, no, you can finish your thought. I have a point that you just thought of.
No, that was pretty much it. Like,
okay.
There might have to be some rules at the table when you discover new things.
Be very, very, very careful about multiclassing if you're playing a homebrew class.
Yeah.
Homebrew classes are usually designed exclusively with that class in mind.
Yeah.
And nothing else mixed in there.
Absolutely.
Even well-made homebrew has a bad habit of breaking 5 ways to Sunday when you add even a single one level of the right class to it. So.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on my bitrate. It's again like, it's mostly stable, but it might freak out occasionally, so it shouldn't be bad enough where things drop out completely, but just be mindful of that, everyone, that we know the problem's there and we're sorry about it. So in addition to, like, there's pros and cons, just don't be a dick about it. What are some, like, more mechanical concerns that we need to think of when it comes to multiclassing? So there's different requirements for different classes. And that is, if you know that you want to have your character multiclass down the line, making sure that you don't have too many stats below a 13. Because that's normally the threshold for them, right? It's 13.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything. No, it's only 13s.
Yeah.
And that you know which classes, again, based on your stats, that your character would be able to jump into. Anything else that you should keep in mind about, like, the base requirements for planning to multiclass?
When it comes to those requirements, they're generally there to help you avoid multiclassing stupidly by going like, I'm going to take a level of wizard with my 8 intellect. Sure, look forward to being able to only prepare 1 spell a day. But I mean, there are builds that make it work, but it's usually there to help you. And you should, as Paula said, you should consider the class when you're any classes that you might want to
Mhm.
multiclass into when you're making your character. If something does come up midway through the campaign and it's just like, my character found God,
Mm.
you might be able to talk to your GM about letting you ignore the restrictions, but don't expect your DM to be as merciful if it's clear that you're just doing it for a mechanical thing if you didn't do it in the first place.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that's also, if something does happen in story, there are usually different ways you can go about multiclassing into it. So a character finding religion, you can become a cleric, you can become a paladin, you can, depending on the particular god you've found, you might be able to go, actually, this takes the form of you being able to become a druid. You don't know where, like, how that link works, but you can feel that you are more connected to whether it's the ocean, because that's, you know, your god's domain. There's also a very thin line between a god and a patron, so warlock could still be on the table, depending again on whether that god would go down that route. If your character is resurrected by a certain very spidery goddess, then your options might be slightly different than.
You
Mhm.
sound like you're talking from experience there, Polished.
It may have something may have happened on Thursday where my character nearly died. Well, she did die in a fighting pit and was resurrected by a certain drow entity.
Also, I would suggest, other than just the base requirement, along with what Posh was saying, is just please tie it to your story.
Yeah.
I do not want to play in a game where you are a fighter and you know nothing about magic at all, and then all of a sudden you're like,
Hey guys, I
man,
found a
people,
spell book.
I've got a spell book. I can cast spells, and we're just like, how? And you're just like, nah, I don't know. Like, please, just give me some nugget of
Yeah.
information of how you learned what you were learning to then multi-class.
Yeah.
I don't need the whole world. I don't need you to write me 32 pages about how you multi-classed. I just want some way for you to tie that to the story, because if you don't, I feel like it almost takes me a little out of the story.
Yeah.
If you don't tie it in some way.
And I'd say on a similar thing is that, again, keep your options open, because there's only, I know we're saying plan it out with your character, but also keep an open mind. And I think that realizing that there's different ways and different directions for a character to go after the same event can be really helpful in that. I think it's especially important to have a story justification if it's, again, something associated with religion or with magic, or, you know, things that you can't really train yourself to do on your own. Like, if your character is suddenly a sorcerer, how did that happen? Like, was it a dormant power or a dormant bloodline that, you know, after you were exposed to, I don't know, did your party take down a dragon and you absorbed some of that, like, draconic blood as a badge of honor? You know, there's, again, different things you can do to bring that about, but you want to think about why that might happen.
Right, and along that line, what your DM can do, there's many options to, you know, slowly bring in that power. If you took down a dragon and somehow, like, some of that energy just kind of brought out your sorcerer, like your innate sorcerer nature that was just not, you know, it was laying dormant. Your spells may not be casting correctly the first couple times you try them. You know, it may take you some time of, like, you know, downtime in the woods of, like, practicing your spells to learn how to use them. Well, actually, don't go to the woods if you're a sorcerer. There's fire and wood. It doesn't go somewhere near water.
Yeah.
Right, but to train to properly, fully handle your spells.
Yeah, I admit this. The randomly taking a level of sorcerer is one of my pet peeves.
Yeah.
Like, I see it often enough. It's like, well, I'm a sorcerer now. It helps if you trickle it in, like before you take, like 1 or 2 levels before you take it. Maybe ask your DM to help you work it into your character. Of like, it's slowly coming out in small bursts here and there. Something.
Yeah.
Like these two are perfectly right.
And I'd also say, same thing with Warlock. Like, why is your character suddenly willing to accept such a deal? Why were you offered this deal? You don't just wake up one day and go, patron sounds nice, and, send out applications.
See, I personally feel like the Warlock is one of the easiest ones to multi-class.
Yeah, provided, link it to the story, and it's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go, I want to take a Warlock level. The DM goes, oh, do you now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got plans already.
Right. If you're going, I would say if you're going to take a level of Warlock, definitely let your DM know ahead of time so that they can plan something specific or for that event to take place.
Yeah.
Because there is going to have to be some sort of meeting with your patron or your future patron that takes place or something to that effect, and they're actually going to have something ready for it versus if you just are like, yo, we're leveling up, we're in town, I'm going to be a warlock. It's like, all right,
yeah,
now we're doing this on the fly.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? Satan's kind of a chill guy. I kind of just thought about it.
And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for like linking etiquette and mechanics. But also
the requirements.
Yeah. We've been talking a little bit about it, but multiclassing and magic is a minefield. And I mentioned before, one of my characters is a sorcerer warlock. It's a bit of a headache, but I am very grateful for short rests. But again, it's a sort of whole thing of both mechanically how these things interact, but there can also be a bit of a tension story-wise. Like if you're a caster that get their source of magic from 2 different sources, some gods might object to you having a bit of a side piece. So yeah, a paladin's god might not be super keen to learn that you have made a deal with a patron to dabble into warlock and get your magic from 2 different sources. This is a little bit like cheating. So both from a story perspective, magic can become complicated, but mechanically, it's great fun to try to keep track of what you're doing with your life.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else who's multiclassed into like 2 full casters?
Yes. One of the things to keep in mind is, as I said, you do run the risk of losing some firepower when multiclassing because with spellcasters, because when you first look at it, you think, so the way, first I'll explain, the way spellcasting multiclassing works is you take effectively the levels that you have in both of all of your spellcasting classes and add them up. Paladins are considered half casters, so they're only worth half the points, and Eldritch Knights and Arcane Tricksters are only worth a third of the points in terms of level. So you need 3 levels of those to even be considered 1 level of a caster. But you add all those points up, and that determines your spell casting level for the multi-class character. That determines your spell slots. So if you have, let's say, 3 levels of wizard and 2 levels of cleric, you put them all together, and you have the same spell slots as a 5th level wizard or 5th level cleric, but you still only have a lower level spell. And this is where it will trip you up if you don't get to 5th level at first in one of your classes, because as I said, these spells get a lot stronger when you get to 3rd level spells. And you will regularly be caught in this weird situation where, like, I can upcast, but an upcast Burning Hands is nothing compared to a fireball still.
Also, Fox, I'm not sure if it was you who sent me a message on Discord. I can't see it.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Oh, okay. No, because it was just like as you were typing, I got a notification, so just in case.
No.
Awesome.
I'll let someone else handle pack magic. How that works.
Pact magic is complicated when you're integrating it with a full caster. It's especially complicated if that full caster is a sorcerer, because of how these two different classes can or can't interact, and a lot of it is going to have to be down to the GM's ruling. The way that we've done it with the sorcerer warlock that I've got is that they are entirely separate. So you can't convert between them. I can get pact slots back after a short rest, but I can only use those for my warlock spells. And the problem is that there's something you can exploit when you're playing a sorcerer warlock. Because you get pact slots back after a short rest, some rulings do allow you to then convert those into sorcery points, and from sorcery points into meta magic or additional spell slots. Meaning you're a sorcerer who recharges at a far higher rate than sorcerers were ever meant to. I would say that is something that I've never even tried to do that, because I think it's a bit on the nose. But I would recommend like having some restrictions on even, there's only so many short rests I'll let you take in a day. Or, you know, you can only do this a certain number of times per day. Because especially as you get the few added pact slots from a warlock, and they're at a higher level, converting like a 5th level pact slot gives you a ton of sorcery points. So it's a lot of complicated interactions, particularly with sorcerer warlocks, which is why, although it's something that is a classic combination, I would say that it is also one of the greatest potential sources for headaches out of any class combinations. It was also my very first experience with multiclassing. So it was a bit of a learning curve, because I'd also never played a freaking warlock before.
Lovely.
So, very high learning curve, especially when it comes to magic and how they interact mechanically. And I would say that if you do go down that route and you're in a similar position to where I was, simplify how you let the magic interact. So just go, okay, these are your warlock slots, pact slots, those are your warlock spells. You can't use them for anything that you don't have access to purely as a warlock. It does, however, mean that the character might be slightly nerfed compared to if you have far more liberal rules about how these two different sources interact. But there are ways to make it more simple and more complicated depending on preference.
It's worth pointing out, because I don't think you clearly mentioned it. Pact magic, the warlock's pact magic, is not spellcasting.
Yeah, technically not.
Not the same as the wizard, the sorcerer, the cleric, the druid, the artificer, the paladin, the eldritch, the arcane trickster. Everybody else is different.
Slots. Yeah. And that's the thing, like, again, like, whether you are allowing that to be considered a spell slot when you're multi-class, often that comes down to like GM's ruling on how you want to navigate this minefield. But packed slots do definitely work differently compared to spell slots, which is easy to overlook at first because you're like, oh yeah, I'm just a full-on caster. Like, what's the problem? Well, problem is that warlocks and sorcerers are both freaking complicated.
Yeah.
So if you do wanna, have you had a warlock that's also been another type of caster, Type-O?
Warlock Wizard, one of my earlier classes.
So what would you say about, what was that like to combine those two forms of magic?
I had so many spells, so many.
Yeah.
It was great for having a spell for every occasion. Again, it was one of the problems where I had to like look up constantly. Having the option of being able to cast through packed magic or my normal spell slots was cool. And the one thing I really liked about it personally, the reason I did it, is because warlock slots recharge on a short rest and normal spots recharge on a long rest. I saved my my spell slots like, from my wizard class for combat and stuff like that, but basically had a free spell slot that I could just throw around and goof off with during a casual roleplay. Disguise self, invisibility, illusions. Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, I don't know what's going on with my bitrate or why today, but I know the issue is there. Not much I can do about it, unfortunately. So, yeah, just apologies that the stream's a little unstable today. So, let's move on to the aspect of leveling up when you're multiclassing. Because that's another part where things get, at times, a bit complicated.
Yeah. So the easy way to explain this to everybody is, in general, if you play one class, at level 4 in that class, you will get an ability score improvement. Problem is, if you multi-class, stuff like that you won't get at the same rate because it is based on class. So you won't hit that level 4 spot in your fighter because you may be a level 4 character, but you may have 2 levels in fighter and 2 levels in rogue, let's say, because why not? And so when it comes to reading your classes and what you can do as you level up, you can only do the things pertaining to your class of what level that class is. So if you're 2 levels in rogue, when it says at level 2 you can do this, great, that's what you can do. And for fighter, at level 2 you can do this, and there you go. But at the same time in the campaign, your character is a level 4 and your fellow party may be level 4s, like your wizard is now a level 4 wizard. They're getting ability score increases and stuff like that for their character that you aren't seeing. So just know that when you are leveling, your leveling is, your character may go up a level, but that doesn't mean that your classes also go up a level. One of your classes and or you take on another class goes up 1 level.
Yeah, and the next thing we've got is, so let's say you're creating a level 1 character. How do you determine if you want to multiclass with this character later on, and how do you incorporate that into character creation? Like sometimes things happen in the story later down the line, but when you're planning the character the very first time you're creating them.
I usually have like a build set up that like a path of what levels I want to take. I might switch it up as I level and things happen in the campaign, make me go like, you know what, maybe I'll take that one level earlier than I was expecting to. But I usually have like a road map. With my character Explosia, I ended up going Bard, then to Hexblade, then to Paladin level, then another Paladin level, and then she was going to go back to Bard. So, like, I had that like every level planned out, or like from the beginning of the campaign. But I was open to like slight changes in the order, depending on what happened.
I am the total opposite. I don't plan for it. Like in character creating, I write things in there that could lead to options. So I always leave, when I write my backstory, I always leave things that could lead down some sort of path in the campaign that the DM may choose or choose not to take. And if they choose to take it, I'm like, well, depending on what happens here, something could change with my character, and I'm okay with that. But also, you know, if they choose not to take it, I am okay where I'm at. So, as the campaign progresses and things do or do not happen, I kind of get a more, and we start leveling up. You know, I may be at level 2, and I'm like, you know, at level 2, I'm kind of feeling at level 3, I may want to take something in that, and it may be something that, you know, I add something to my backstory, or I, you know, give something extra to the DM to then work in that may help me get to that level 3. And I kind of try and give them some information that they can feed off of to, you know, potentially go down a route that would allow me to do a multi-class that I want to. But initially, I'm not always planning on multi-classing.
Yeah.
But I always leave avenues for it.
Yeah.
There's two things for me. Like, obviously, I want to allow the story to go where it goes, but in terms of planning for it, it's the basics of what do my stats allow is a big one for me. And again, like, I probably won't go something like Barbarian Wizard unless I have insane stats happening. Because then I've got a character whose dump stat is a 13. So she can do pretty much whatever the hell she wants. Which, you know, is great fun, but that's not... It's very rare that you, at level 1, have a dump stat of 13. Yeah. And I think that having a sort of... If I were to multi-class, what would my options realistically be? Based on those base stats. Because if I... You know, let's say that I start the game with... I don't know, I want to become a paladin later on. But I have a strength of 10 from my original build. That means I'm going to have to get to at least 2 ability score set of improvements before I could even do that. So it's a lot of what are my options, making sure that they are actually on the table, so that you can then use those ability score improvements to get to a point where this unusual build or whatever you want to go for is actually viable. So for me, it's a combination of I think I fall somewhere between the two of you in how I plan for multi-classing, in that I like a list of options, and okay, this is what I can see happening, but I don't plan it out like step by step in the same way as Type-O does, at least personally.
So something I want to throw in there is so we talked about when you create a level 1 character, how do you determine if you should multi-class and what you want to do for that.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do some stories about a time that we have unexpectedly multi-class something that was a spontaneous moment, like, oh my gosh, this happened in the campaign, and
Um,
hey, suddenly I'm taking warlock levels. Looks at
so
Polish.
she hasn't taken warlock levels yet. But honestly, the only time when I've ended up multiclassing and wasn't prepared for it was when you gave me a character that that was built as a multiclass, and I'm like, oh shit, I've never played either of these classes before. Guess I'm gonna learn.
That campaign was great because you had a 40% chance of playing a multi-class character.
Yeah. And I chose to stick with Scraggle because I liked him. But I've got two multi-class characters, one that I've played once and one for an upcoming campaign. They're both, for some reason, combining Rogue and Wizard. I don't know why. Because it's not the most obvious combination to go for, but one of them has 4 levels of Wizard, 1 level of Rogue. Because she wasn't born into, like, being surrounded by magic, so it's something that she's discovered later in life. The level 3 character that I'm making has 2 levels of Rogue, 1 level in Wizard, and she has a brother who is a bard, and she was like, I shall not be outdone, I too will learn magic. And I know I could have gone down the arcane trickster route, but I liked the fact that she might have done that earlier in her life, and not, when she would have gotten to level 3. She would have gone Rogue, Wizard, Rogue, and how she got there. My poor Vitra, who has just come back from the dead, and who owes a pretty massive favor to Lolth, is... I haven't decided if that's going to affect the path she's going down, because she's been a straight-up sorcerer, is very freaking committed to that. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to mean multiclassing or if it's actually going to have a mechanical impact. I haven't decided yet. She's literally just come back from the dead, so she hasn't processed anything. Yeah. What about you guys?
Fox.
Type-O?
Okay. Shepherd.
When have you unexpectedly found yourself multiclassing?
For me, I think the last time I did it was I was playing an evil minion who was a fighter.
Of course.
And she was a goofy little idiot, and it was very much that whole, like, the smart, clever boss and the dumb mook who follows and screws up all of his orders. However, she kind of had actually a bit of a tragic backstory of, like, being a minion, things went wrong regularly, and she had trouble. She was very friendly, but she was often expected her friends to die, because that's what evil minions do when heroes come along. And throughout the campaign, nobody died, actually, for a while. We went from level 3 to about level 10, and everything was going well, and then finally, someone died, an NPC. And that kind of threw her into this, like, position of going, oh my gosh, I thought I was out. I had thought I had finally gotten strong enough that I don't have to keep losing the people I care about. I can start forming bonds and actually, putting my heart at risk. And what she ended up doing was this anger in her festered, and it's not widely known by everybody, but paladins don't need God.
Yeah.
Paladins get their powers through their own conviction and their belief. And what her conviction was is that she refuses to allow this to continue happening to her. And this started brewing slowly. I took 1 level of Paladin. I was going to see if, like, it kept going. 2 levels of paladin, and I started to bring it up a little bit more that like it's becoming apparent that this is emerging within her character, and I even had a one-on-one with her boss of like, you see this happening, and I'm going to let you know now, your character can recognize this. This is not a paladin of vengeance coming out. This is a paladin conquest.
Ooh.
So
Nice.
it was an interesting relationship. He ended up actually stoking the flames a little bit more, and she became a paladin of conquest. And she went through a whole arc of like starting as a minion, and at the end she's like, well, I'm going to finish up my contract with you, boss, but afterwards, you know, I'm going to go start my own empire now.
Nice.
It was really sweet for a bunch of people whose final act in the campaign was blowing up a bar full of innocent people. But to be fair, the fireworks were impressive, and they had just saved the world, so they earned it.
Yeah, I think for... oh yeah, go for it.
I've never had an experience where I didn't plan on multiclassing, so
wow,
it's not as exciting as like there was always, like, it may have been you know, later than, you know, I don't plan right away, but maybe later, but I always have some sort of like, okay, I am going to multiclass and this is what I'm going to do, and then I work it out with the DM. But I've never just been like, well, I'm a warlock now, this happened, you know, like I've never just had an unplanned multiclass.
Yeah, I've got... I mean, and Ira didn't know she was going to multiclass, but I did because I made her. I think I've got a level 2 barbarian at the moment, who I think is very likely to end up multiclassing, because she's got the stats for it, but I don't know which direction that would be, and that would be dependent upon what happens to her, and when, and if she lives that long for that matter. So it's a sort of, I think it's going to happen, but I'm not sure. And that's often how I find myself going story-wise. Like, I'm prepared for the option, but not the direction or story link, so to speak. So, why do you guys personally make the choice to multiclass? Why is it something you do?
When I'm doing it initially, I have a real nasty habit of going to the classes and going, I don't give a fuck what your name is called, I'm taking you for your abilities, and I'm going to rename you under my own class called Overlord or Jester or whatever I want. And I basically take a bunch of multi-classes to try to make my own class, essentially. I try to avoid doing anything that's like super optimized, because again, that's the whole concept of be respectful to your DM and fellow players. Don't try to break the game.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What about you, Fox? Sorry, were you done, Tavern?
Oh no, I was just saying. And occasionally, the whole thing with my minion and her becoming a paladin happens.
Yeah.
Mine mostly is just for RP. Like, I get some utility out of it, but like, I get to add a little role playing into it, and I really like that. Again, I mostly multi-class as Bard, and therefore I get some utility out of it. I get spells that I can help control the battlefield and whatnot. But being able to either take that and be able to tell more compelling stories, or maybe using that Bard to be more convincing in persuasion or stuff like that, to where like you can take it a lot of different routes to add it in, to add flavor to your character.
Mm.
Sometimes you need that leader, and that inspiring bard is just what you need. And you know, it's a lot more for me about the story than it is about, well, I can min-max this character, and by adding bard, it's gonna give me this, and I'm gonna be great. It's more story for me.
Yeah. Oh. Going off what you're saying, I got asked with my character Explosi, I got asked, why did you take Bard? I'm just like, because she's a friendly and supportive person, and I felt Bardic inspiration perfectly reflected that. That's it.
Yep.
And I think that sometimes it's just because I want to try like a fun thing with a mechanic, or I want to play something I haven't played before but think I'll get bored playing like a straight up rogue or whatever. But
You'll never get bored.
Sometimes, like with Anira, because I was like, I want her to be a sorcerer. I know I'm good at them. But I've been playing sorcerers a ton, and especially on stream, sometimes you want a go-to action. I'm like, all I want is Eldritch Blast. Like, for me, as like a player, I'm like, I just want to be able to do that. And have that be, straightforward sorcerer version, or like caster version of, I just attack. For sorcerers, for those who haven't played them, very few of them have that sort of basic go-to attack or cantrip that works in almost any situation. And I was like, I need that in my life. But then it was like, so why on earth would she multiclass into Warlock? And oh my god, Anira is a character that has taken me the longest to create. I thought poor Ed was going to murder me because it took 2 separate sessions on 2 separate days to make this freaking character. And like, I do character creation streams. It's like 15-20 minutes done. And that's while talking to chat. So 2 days is really unusual for me. And that led to the decision to make her a Simic hybrid. And the fact that if you were captured, turned into a whole different type of creature, and you spent, again, like most of your life being the subject of experiments, and then you're offered this deal. Like, join me and I'll break you out. You take that. Like, to me, that's a very understandable, like, reason for a person to go, yes, I will take your deal. Not only will I take your deal, I will spend my life trying to make it up to you. So that sort of became, I needed to base her story around why she decided to do this. So yeah, the whole character took so long to create because I needed everything to fit into place to start her as a multi-class character. I'm still amazed that Ed didn't like kick me out of the campaign for indecisiveness. But I'm glad he didn't, because I enjoy playing it.
That actually brings up another interesting thing of the fluff of your multi. You can actually change the fluff of your multi-class. If you need it to work, you can frame the story in a slightly different way. With my character Explosia, she didn't like form some contract with a blade, with a magic blade or anything. She had an heirloom sword that she had carried along with her. I didn't tell the party that it was magical, actually. Well, I told them, no one believed me.
Those are 2 very different things.
The whole thing was, it was her warlock class was actually an heirloom blade class, and flavor wise, she couldn't do any of her warlock abilities without that sword. So.
Okay. Yeah, I don't often reflavor things that way personally. I think it's super cool when people do.
I am super cool.
Damn it, Typo. So I like the idea of it, but I also appreciate the challenge of getting the story to work with the mechanics as well. So I like both approaches. I just think I naturally go for the other one. So it's really interesting to hear that you were like, no, I'll make this work. Like, Explosive's gonna make this warlock class a bitch, roughly. I like
when
that.
You reflavor things, and cripple yourself a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. So I mentioned that my warlock is a Simic hybrid, which for me opened up the door to multiclassing, like when she became that. Do you guys find that there are certain races that are easier to multiclass with, or that lend themselves to multiclassing more than others? Hey Ed, we were just talking about you before and how I am grateful that you put up with me when I made a Naira over 2 separate days.
Well, and the fact that he created for someone a triple multi-class for a
at level 3, yeah.
Yep. A level 3 triple multi-class. It was great.
And it wasn't bad.
No, it was more like we sort of collectively decided, here Typo, you like multi-class, take this one. But yeah, so any races do you guys find lend themselves to multi-classing really well?
That's the thing is, I don't pick... I guess even just for non-multi-class characters that I play, I don't pick the race directly to fit with the class, because I feel any race can really be any class if you try hard enough.
It's more like, you know, again, think of someone who wants to multi-class for the first time and they're like, I don't even know where to start with this build. If you'd go like, okay, these are some races that might give you inspiration or that have great mechanics for it.
To be completely honest, I don't actually feel that any races really lend to multiclassing more than another, because I think each one has its own circumstances where they'll help promote multiclassing in different ways. And the one exception might be Variant Human, just because you can take a feat at first level and you can, like, that can open the door to a mixture of classes early on that wouldn't play nice normally. But aside from the fact that Variant Human is so diverse, no.
That's the one that was going to be my answer as well. It's like Variant Human is probably the easiest to do that with, unless you have a specific build in mind. Yeah, and just like Ed is saying, a lot of GMs are moving away from like racially based ability scores and going down like, what have you actually done with your life? You did something after being born. Hopefully that influences your strength a little bit more than, you know, like making backgrounds matter, which I'd like because I'm a big fan of linking story and mechanics. And are there any that are especially problematic to multiclass with, or where there might be additional challenges?
As far as races?
Yeah.
Man, it's really tough because like I haven't really thought about races and multiclassing just because I pick my race for character purpose and that's it. Let me look something up for you potentially, and I may come back to that.
I honestly, I think there's only one class, like one race that I would say has trouble with with multiclassing, and that's Dragonborn, because you should never take Dragonborn because shit.
Jeez, Typo, tell us how you really feel.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Dragonborn is actually perfect for multiclass.
Say, it's gonna depend on a lot of like the world, the world they're in as well. Like for example, if you're playing something like a goblin or a tiefling or a dragonborn, it might be harder for you to say, join a church, because your kind aren't welcome there. So like linked to the world, that's probably when I'd say it could become a factor. And
that opens the door for some interesting roleplay.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I just mean more like in designing something that sort of fits with the world they're in already. And yeah, for example, like, again, a lightfoot halfling would be good with anything trying to be stealthy, so they might lend themselves going like... Okay, so for example, classic thing, tieflings and their charisma bonus, there's a reason why tieflings are often warlocks in-game, because their build, both story-wise and mechanics-wise, often lend themselves really well to that. And if you know that they naturally fall into something and you'll get a bonus that works with that, then working to building up for a multiclass in another direction can go really well as well. And again, we're speaking mainly mechanically, but yeah, there are definitely like some bonuses, like being able to breathe underwater can be really good if you're a druid and you don't know how long your animal form is going to last, so that you don't, drown yourself. So sometimes it's like little details like that will make your life easier. I think it's half-elves that can't be charmed. Elves and half-elves that can't be charmed,
Advantage
right?
versus charm can't go to sleep.
Yeah.
Be put to sleep.
And that stuff like that can be used to compensate for, I normally wouldn't be able to pass these saving throws very easily, but I'm likely to be a target of certain spells. But again, that assumes that you sort of know what kind of world you're going into. You're trying to counteract a very specific weakness. And that takes a lot of sort of planning and forethought to get to that point. I like, again, Simic Hybrid, because your form has been changed, not necessarily by your will. I find that gives a good story reason as to why someone would change direction in life. Same thing, half-elves and half-orcs for that matter, and the duality aspect, like having been potentially raised in two different worlds or societies, can also explain, like, this is why I've had to develop two sets of skills just based on the life that I've been through. So that's more like, again, story-wise, but that's going to depend on the world you're playing in and what backstory you're going with. But yeah, that's probably the ones that I'd go, that is my go-to for multiclassing. So we've been talking a lot about different combinations. Ooh, the new Unearthed Arcana has apparently just dropped.
Yeah.
What's it on? We still have more to talk about, but I'm just like, ooh, distracted.
Oh, it's several subclasses.
Ooh.
They're good. They're actually a lot of them pretty good, except for the monk one. Dumb.
What are they? Just like, what are their names?
There's like a beast barbarian, which is cool.
Yeah.
There is like Path of Mercy monk. there is a Watcher Paladin, which is like anti, like aberration and like extraplanar beings. And lastly, there is a Genie Patron for Warlocks.
Ooh.
Good gosh, why am I able to remember this but not like brain cells? Why? Devote yourself to something useful.
I love that.
Yep. That is exactly everything.
Holy crap, that's impressive, Typo. So, what are some common or classic multi-class combos? And why are they, so prevalent? I know you guys brought up Bard anything, but specifically
Bard.
Paladin Bard or Bard Rogue.
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Yeah.
You go.
You can go Bard anything. You can go Barbarian. You can go Bardlock. You can go just Bard. They're flexible to be in anything.
The real reason to do it is that you can sneak the word Bard into any mixture of class name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually with Pokemon. The one that I've always gone lends itself well to multiclassing is Warlock. In addition to Bard, like Warlock is the other one that I keep seeing pop up.
Warlock is especially common now due to Hexblade, because Warlock has always played pretty nice with a lot of other casters. And now that the Hexblade is out, it's a very good way to use Charisma for martial abilities. So
it's also Warlock's recharge is really, really nice to just have. Especially if you're like high prone to playing classes that don't get any benefits at all from short rests. Like, it can feel so wonderful to actually go, oh wow, hanging out for an hour actually did something for me.
Yeah, like if you're a fighter and you're just chilling and you get spells back, you're just like, heck yeah, those spells I used earlier, I get them back.
Yeah.
Great.
Literally, yeah. And that's why I think Warlock is common, but Bard, why beyond... You can combine it into funny names.
Well, you can combine it into funny names, but a lot of their spells do control the battlefield, so you will generally have, your front line, and you're going to have your casters that are throwing out, like, fireballs and whatnot, but, like, just having those extra spells there, and always take, one healing spell, because may as well have multiple people that can get someone up, so that if someone's, not able to heal at the moment because of some reason or another, you have someone else that can. But also just having spells that can control the battlefield.
Sorry,
so
I just
that
disconnected my headset.
What?
I didn't hear what you said. Sorry, cable.
So where did I leave off for you?
When I started looking really confused, roughly. So yeah,
Okay.
just a few seconds.
Yeah. No, it's just nice, like, having one healing spell so that you have another person that can heal someone that goes down. And then also having a bunch of spells that can control the battlefield that'll, do various things that either, hey, I may not be doing damaging spells, but I'm doing stuff that allows all of our other people to either hit someone easier, or I believe bards get sleep, right? Bards get sleep.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Put the battlefield to sleep. Stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's just one of those, you can take a lot of things that help the battle, but are not necessarily like they have to be damaging spells.
They honestly just cover so many, like, even in one level of Bard, it has so many options. You have heals from like a cleric. You have Thunder Wave, which is a blast spell like a wizard. You've got support spells as well from the Bard, and like control spells. Then you have Bardic Inspiration on top of that. So almost every class can make use of something there, and it adds to their kit. So if you like bards, good news, you can almost always take a little bard.
I mean, they do get around. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
Shame, going for the low-hanging fruit. Yeah.
So, why did you guys highlight Paladin and Rogue as combos they often end up in?
So
with a bard?
Paladin actually mixes well with sorcerers, warlocks, and bards. In fact, I personally think that a sorcerer, essentially paladin sorcerer,
you guys don't have to match the names, you know.
can be stronger than a palabard. The general idea behind it is you put 2 levels in paladin, and you get access to divine smite, which, and then you start taking levels of a caster class, like a sorcerer or bard, and you get spell slots faster than you do as a pure paladin, which means you get your powerful smites faster. So when you hit something with your sword, it explodes. And you can keep doing that constantly.
Yes. So spell slot mechanics, pretty much.
Yep.
So yeah, they're basically smite paladin. Fighter and any caster class is also common, because fighter's second level ability is action surge.
Yeah.
And at first level, when you take a dip in a martial class, they often give you weapon and armor proficiency. Fighter gives you everything except heavy armor if you put the class into it, which can be very useful for turning your little squishy wizard into a tanky boy. And they also get action surge at second level, which is one of the easiest ways to, once per short rest, I can do 2 spells on a turn.
Yay!
So, let's see, fireball, fireball. Hey!
Also, I'm echoing back again when I laugh. I think it's from your side, Typo. It's very weird to hear yourself laughing back at you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's disjointing.
It's like having an audience.
The other combo we have talked quite a bit about is Sorcerer Warlock. It's a classic. It will give you a headache. Yeah. Or just a locker.
It will also possibly make your DM sweat.
Yeah.
Because there's a build explicitly called Coffee Lock, which is explicitly about gaming the system to never take a short rest, stockpile spell slots, and have like 50 spell slots. And just go, I can cast Fireball literally all day long. I never have to stop.
Yeah.
So that's, if your DM looks at you and going, taking Sorcerer and Warlock, that's why he's having a heart attack.
I would say that being able to recover a bit of your spellcasting power at a short rest, even if you don't exploit it, is really, really nice compared to just straight up Sorcerer. Having a go-to action for when you don't know what the fuck to do and just blast things is also very nice. But at the same time, sorcerers are more versatile than warlocks at higher levels. I find that when people multiclass with warlock, it's often only a handful of levels in that, and then they've got another primary class that they go for. And especially, I mean, they're a nightmare to build because there's so many things you need to work out a character creation with both sorcerers and warlocks. And at a higher level, getting access to things like meta magic and sorcery points, and combining that with the elements of warlock, super fun. But the mechanics involved give most people, including myself, a bit of a headache. There is also, like we've hinted before, a bit of an exploit built into Sorcerer Warlock, and that is using, like, converting packed slots into sorcery points, which not all GMs will let you do because they catch on pretty quickly. And I've never done that. I've been tempted to, but I kind of want to save that for a time when I desperately need a bit of a recharge. So it's there, don't exploit it, because that's just don't do it.
Yeah, I'll admit I actually I swore I'd never do it, and I joined an epic level campaign with a special add-on, and
you're not my only GM, Ed.
it was interesting because I was like, ooh, I can take like a level of warlock. Oh my gosh, this epic level thing lets me do this that whole thing to like 8th level. Like 8th level spells, so I just have all these 8th level spells. It's a one shot, it's an epic level. You know what? For one time, I'm going to treat myself. That's it.
I would recommend, again, like, only doing that.
Yeah.
Once in a blue moon.
Don't do it, kids. Don't be like me.
So
I know 2 other multi-class that are common.
Okay, go for it.
Rogue and fighter are pretty common because fight just a good mix of it's pretty simple to do. It's well balanced. It gives you the kind of flavor in between the 2 classes, which is really nice. If you don't want to be too squishy, but you don't want to just sit there and go smack, 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 smack. Perfect mix. And the last one I know is really common is Ranger Rogue.
Okay.
Now, the important thing to keep in mind here is do not use the player's handbook Ranger. Use the revised Ranger from Unearthed Arcana.
Yeah.
But if you use that one and the Rogue, it's actually a really nice mix because the revised Ranger gives things like advantage on initiative, advantage on anybody that hasn't taken a turn yet on that first turn. They have several like mobility abilities, so it really allows you to play a very fast, like shooting around the battlefield kind of rogue who's really good at like wilderness stuff, as opposed to the more typical rogue, which is more of the street tough guy.
Yeah, I've seen fighter rogue quite a lot, and I think that's a lot of people start out with fighter because they're like, I want something simple, and it's the thing people recommend to a new player is often to play a fighter. But they get repetitive pretty quickly, just like you mentioned. And then people go, oh, what's another easy class that I can do with what was supposed to be a fighter build? And very often you put those points into decks to allow for it. Unless you're going like full, like heavy armor type build. I've also seen...
Don't try that.
Yeah.
Clank, clank, clank.
Yeah. Stealthily clanking down the hallway.
just look at your enemies. You don't see me! I roll intimidate, actually.
It's like if you throw in like high level charisma in there as well. Someone tried to be a jack of all trades, but always has to use another skill to do something. So it doesn't have to be a classic. It doesn't have to be common, but what are your favorite multi-class combinations? If you're like, oh, this is what I'd go for.
Type-O, go for it.
Well, I'm sorry, I missed it.
what are your favorite what are your personal favorite combos for multiclassing?
Okay. Literally any of my friends can tell you this. Mystic. It's a Unearthed Arcana class. It's also one of the more dangerous classes to allow player to multiclass into because it can be abused. But it has a lot of little. It has a great deal of versatility even at very low levels, what you can take, and you can kind of like pick and choose pieces of it to work like glue in between another multiclass. So I personally like it. I wouldn't recommend it to a new player.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it until after you've gotten some goodwill with the GM and they know that you're ethical and you're going to be responsible with what they give you. So
Fair. Any other sort of set combos that you're really into, or anything with Mystic?
I've been doing. I think I've been doing a fair bit of Paladin, but I just kind of like the Paladin, I guess, right now.
As I've been saying all show, anything with Bard. I really, back in the day, because I almost solo played Rogue most of the time back in the day, went Rogue Bard a good number of times, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, whenever I toy around with ideas for multi-class builds, they often end up having a bit of Paladin in there. Only thing is, I have no interest in actually playing a Paladin. So, I like the idea, but I wouldn't do it personally. Like, a Paladin Warlock was on my shortlist. Last time I made, well, not the last time, like quite recently for trying to plan a multi-class character, and I'm like, no, I don't want to play a Paladin. So I'm like, good combo, just not for me. I've recently, the last two characters that I've made have multi-classed between Rogue and Wizard. And it's probably, I don't know why. I don't know why I've gotten stuck on that combo. Because it's not one of the go-to ones. It's not an obvious combination at all. With the first one, who is 1 level Rogue, 4 levels Wizard, the idea behind that is to sort of make her into almost like, not a special agent, but the person who can go in undercover and investigate, and a lot of those rogue skills are really, really useful for that. And then, obviously having gone down formally trained magic, like, yeah, Coffee Lock is apparently, like, it's one of those, like, it sits on top of 2 different rules on how things can be done, and yeah, it's a lot of GM discretion. That's pretty much what we've come down at. So yeah, Wizard Rogue has ended up being my most played or designed multi-class, and I have no freaking clue why. Are there any classes that you guys would recommend not multi-classing with at all?
I would personally say Ranger because I just don't like Ranger.
Like Rangers.
Wait,
so
yeah. What about Revised Ranger?
I still don't like it enough.
Fair enough.
I am so tempted to actually make a Wizard Barbarian, by the way, Ed. I'm really tempted to do that.
A Barbizard is okay in my book.
A Barbizard, gosh, that's.
I've just.
So, I think that is actually the perfect example of the one that is going to have the most trouble with.
That's the thing. Her stats are super high. Again, like her dump stat is a 13. Yeah. So she could do it.
Correction. There's one build where you can make that work. if you take a barbarian and then you take Blade Singer, because Blade Singer works with it still.
Mm-hmm.
You can rage and Blade Sing at the same time. Ugh. You're unkillable.
Actually, the one class that it's mainly because of the mechanics. I would probably not multi-class with a druid. Druid is already like playing a multi-class, but holy crap, if you were to combine it with something like Warlock or frickin' Sorcerer, it's like you're going to run into so many situations where even if you don't intend to, you might break the game. Barbarian Druid I'd say is one of the few ones that sort of still makes sense, and that's because barbarians are so straightforward. But yeah, I'm of the firm belief that druids are the single most mechanically complicated class, like outside of homebrew.
The one case I think you can mix druid with something is cleric.
Yeah, that's a pretty common one.
If you want a really powerful healer, was it Circle of Dreams Druid and Life Cleric? They're basically like, okay, I've min-maxed all healing. I've got the strongest abilities in the game for this one thing. I'm not going to help you out in combat. I'm just going to watch. Okay. Patch you up afterwards.
Yeah, the one thing that is also important with druids is that they don't wear armor. Or like don't wear metal. Which could make it difficult to multi-class into certain classes because you're never likely to get very high. Like the higher levels, heavier levels of armor was what I tried saying. But yeah,
unless you're a Blade Singer Druid. Oh my gosh, the stat array that you'd need to make that work. Gosh.
Yeah. And
also, just imagining a cat spinning around with swords. I almost want to play this now.
Damn it, Chad, we've given him
Also,
ideas.
apparently Ed hates my druid barbarian name.
Yeah, we all do, Fox. We just didn't have the heart to tell you.
It's so great, though.
No.
Yeah, I think that's it with my favorite combinations. I do have one last category of some odd, with multi-classing, some odd interactions between a couple classes.
Yeah, it's really worth mentioning.
Okay. So I think I mentioned this to you guys earlier, or maybe I mentioned it earlier on stream. If a barbarian is raging, they can actually, like, if they use spiritual weapon, they can actually have spiritual weapon and their rage at the same time because it's nothing to do with concentration. So when they're raging, any non-concentration spells work.
That would be a barbarian.
That's
a barbarian and cleric. Does anyone else have access to spiritual weapon, or is that purely cleric?
Yeah. It's called barbaric.
No. Is there anyone except for clerics who can do a spiritual weapon?
Several classes, but usually the subclasses. Paladin of Conquest gets spiritual weapon, and that one sorcerer gets spiritual weapon.
That one sorcerer, Divine Soul, probably.
Can take spiritual weapon. It can also, I believe, take Mirror Image, which also doesn't go away.
Ooh, and Unearthed Arcana, Raven Queen Warlock. There you go. Also a barbarian fighter, and the fighter has to be battle master. can actually, so nothing in the Barbarian's Rage feature precludes the use of maneuvers for the Battlemaster fighter. So you can rage and use maneuvers. It's a cool interaction. There's a question of, can a rogue/monk use sneak attack with unarmed strikes? And no, you technically can't per what D&D says, but the sneak attack feature works with a weapon that has a finesse or range property. An unarmed strike is not a weapon, so it doesn't qualify. In contrast, a rogue monk can use sneak attack with a monk weapon such as short sword, dagger, staff, etc. But just a interesting interaction. And then I already mentioned the wild magic sorcerer and how your spells are kind of separated into your classes, and therefore a wizard spell could not set off wild magic.
I think that monk is probably one of those very underutilized options for multiclassing.
Monk doesn't get a whole lot because they have.
No, but they get unarmored defense.
Well, it's not just that. Their main feature, it scales with their level alone. So when they multiclass, they lose a lot of power.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. My main point is that I've had scenarios where I've had characters with very, very low AC who don't have armor proficiencies, and I need a way to raise that. And unless I want to train myself in armor, or whether I'm a druid and think I'm not going to wear full-on armor at any point, or I want that for flavor, monk is an option that isn't often used, even as a sort of, hey, I need a backup. And that's where I think they can be really useful. And that's, again, depending on what you need them for. But
I would say, to add to that, they can also be useful in RP situations for if your party ever gets captured for any reason and you don't have your weapons. Having a level on monk is really great because you're just like, I don't need weapons. I'm fine.
I am a weapon.
I'm sorry. Their fist can be replaced with a kitchen knife. It can. It's a 1d4. It's really weak.
I mean,
at level 1. At high levels, good gosh, monk will fuck you up.
And that's what I mean, like, because it's dex and strength that you need for a monk, is it?
Yeah, it's dexterity. Dexterity and wisdom are usually
wisdom, and that's what I mean with having, again, like a build. I could see a druid monk work out story-wise, if you need, or even like a monk with a level or 2 in cleric if you need a bit of extra healing.
I don't think the cleric would need it though, because they can just take medium armor.
No, I mean, if you're a monk and want to multi-class into something, I'd suggest cleric.
Yeah. The monk can go to cleric.
Yeah. Because if you're like a monk and you know that you need some backup options, but you want to be, again, primarily a fighter type character, or you're someone who wants to play a more martial class, but realize that you need a bit of backup, going monk and then taking a level to a druid or cleric, I think, is a viable option. Sorry, I made that argument backwards for some reason. But we got there. I was like, I was going somewhere with this.
I'll give you one. Cleric. You might want to take a level of monk if your GM repeatedly attacks you in the middle of the night because you can't wear your armor to bed, And that's where that unarmored defense will be real.
Mm-hmm.
There's also which class would you recommend multiclassing into if you just want proficiencies? Like equipment wise.
Fighter is generally the most common one because you get fighting style, you get a short rest heal. It's not terrible, like it gives you a little more hit points. It gives you all your armors. Cleric is the other one that's really common because there are a lot of flavors of cleric at level 1.
Yeah.
So you can pick your domain and you get specific abilities for each, and there's almost something for everybody. And
because they've realized that people
spells.
don't want to play healers, so they have to make it appealing. Yeah. And I'm saying that as someone who doesn't like playing a healer, but who's had to play one occasionally. And yeah, both clerics and druids are sort of, they feel a bit like you're already multiclassing when you're playing them, depending on what kind of build you actually made.
They really do.
One thing to know about proficiencies when multiclassing. You do get bonus proficiencies on various things. You do not get proficiencies on saves.
Yeah.
That is one thing you do not get when multiclassing. You only get the saves of your first class.
And Glamour Bard, nice. I know Nia likes playing Glamour Bards, and that is prepping.
Glamour Bard, really nice, good. It's a good. It's the party like. Party's guaranteed to like a Glamour Bard.
I think that's also because we've talked a lot about when you want to multiclass, but sometimes you end up needing to. What are the most common classes to end up with that you didn't really want in the first place, but you kind of had to dabble? I'd say cleric is number one. Like, we need a freaking healer.
Yep.
And same reason, I think bard might also be in that category to get a bit of extra healing. So cleric and bard probably would be my nominations.
I agree with both those. For needing healing or just needing crowd control in your fights. Cleric and bard work well.
I don't really find myself going to any of them like disliking it. So I tend to mix a lot of them. If I go for a martial class, I might tend to lean towards a ranger because I like their kit a little bit more than a fighter, but I also like a fighter's maneuvers, the battle masters.
There was one thing I was going to bring up, and my brain is like, but is there any particular combo that you'd love to try but just haven't had a chance to?
I kind of want to try.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you after you.
Me is I mean, I don't particularly look up combos. I just kind of go off whatever I'm feeling. So, I mean, really nothing off the top of my head right now, but I'm sure, in the next campaign or two or something, I'll come up with something that I'll be like, man, I really haven't done this. Or I may be that person that hates myself that is like, you know what? My druids haven't lived long enough. Let's add something to them.
I was tempted to multiclass when I was playing a druid, but it's the sheer like keeping track of the mechanics would drive me nuts. Um, and I do like the idea of having a barbarian wizard. I really like the idea just because it is so absurd. It's like I want to do that, but I'm not sure it's a good idea. It's not a good idea. I just want to do it anyhow. Ooh. Now that Artificer has joined the mix, how would you recommend multiclassing with an Artificer?
I'm genuinely not familiar enough with it to actually tell you.
Funnily enough, because you made me one.
I know, right? The thing I made you with one because like it was all flavor. First level of artifice, a lot of flavor in it.
Yeah.
And,
Artificer is something that, again, I don't know it super well either, so...
I have read through the Artificer, and I'm still, like, I've read through it multiple times preparing for that one shot, because I didn't know what to expect. Oh, man. Like, I personally think the Artificer is better on its own than it is multi-class.
Yeah.
I just think their build path is a little bit better just going straight Artificer. Or if you're going to multi-class it, like, don't, like, primarily go Artificer and maybe take a level thing. But I would try and stick to the standard Artificer.
I think my problem with Artificers is that I don't like them. And like I don't like the flavor of them. But I think you could have a fun build with an Artificer Wizard. I think you could have a fun build with a Cleric Artificer if you can have the numbers for it. Yes. It's more Type-O's smile where I'm like, what do you mean?
Oh. With some DM...
No, that was something unrelated.
Oh, okay.
If you see me in the chat, you can tell why.
Yeah, no,
with some, working with your DM, I could see some really cool, like doing some cool stuff as a Cleric Artificer mixed, where you essentially make healing grenades that will heal your party. It's definitely something you have to work with your DM on.
Yeah.
But I could see that, and that would actually be kind of cool. Just don't miss.
Yeah. I think the class that'll naturally work best with Artificer is going to be Wizard. Finally, Wizard has another class that it can partner with that's an intellect build.
Yeah. Is there anything beyond Wizard that relies on intellect as its main stat?
There is Arcane Trickster, there's the Eldritch Knight, and then there's the Mystic, which is Unearthed Arcana, so...
Yeah, it's not a whole lot. Like, it's subclasses.
Oh, and the new Psychic ones that are Unearthed Arcana, the Psychic subclasses are also technically int, I think.
For Psychic Sorcerer? Or which ones do you mean?
There's a
do
Psychic
Aberrant
Fighter,
Mind?
Psychic Rogue, and
okay.
Psychic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about the Aberrant Mind and
I think they might use with
called.
intellect as a secondary stat.
Yeah, maybe. Because that's always something that has struck me, and why I like going down the Rogue Wizard combo. Which apparently I like enough to create 2 characters doing that. Don't know why. Is that I knew I wanted to play a wizard at some point, but I didn't find anything to really combine it with. And for some reason, rogue seemed to be useful. And a rogue with a bit more backup magic than you would get with like an arcane trickster. Sorry, not an arcane trickster. No, that's what they're called, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting it confused with the trickster type cleric. But yeah, it just seemed like there would be a fair bit in common. And I like the idea of playing a wizard who, you know, is actually physically capable of doing things. So I think that's why I ended up with 2 wizard rogues. Yeah, is there anything you guys... Same cast stat, add some heals and tools. Yeah. I love the idea of having a familiar and one of those constructs that you mentioned, Typo. I think that could be a really cool flavor. Because you have 3 things you can control.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely enjoy that.
Want to give your DM a headache? You can play that one forge, like, artificer that gets like their personal pet, and then you can take the homunculus add-on. So you have 4 creatures just running around the battlefield permanently.
I like that.
How to quickly get banned from a game.
You can also multiclass into ranger and get an animal companion at some point. So we've got a new build for you guys: wizard, ranger, artificer, all in one. You're a Pokemon trainer now.
It's mechanically shit, but who cares?
There are games where that could be so much fun though.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything else that you guys feel we should cover while we're talking about multiclassing?
I think we got about everything.
Yeah, we got around pretty much everything.
Cool. And yeah, we'll actually be back with another Tavern Talks tomorrow, because we had a bit of a scheduling issue. So you're getting 2 Tavern Talks this week, which makes me very happy. And we'll be discussing wizards, not necessarily when they're combined with rogues, even though I'll probably get the conversation heading in that direction. Yeah, and we'll be joined by Nia, who you've seen on Tavern Talks before, and Belle, who's a frequent player and also GM in our one-shots. So that's where we go coming up next. I'm going to be at ArcadeCon this weekend, so there won't be a 5th edition Evil campaign happening this weekend. We're going to try for the next one. Because I didn't check my schedule before announcing, yeah, of course the campaign is fortnightly. I'm realizing I was in a different state. So yeah, that's what we've got coming up. And that's just this week. Some other exciting things we've got in the works. We are in the process of establishing another 5th edition campaign that's going to be launching in February. We've got 8 sessions for that. We've got, assuming everything works out, you might see a bit more of Type-O, or you'll hear a bit more of Type-O on the channel. And Fox is joining us for regular Tavern Talks, and
Ferrets.
yes.
Battle ferrets.
Yeah. Apparently my stream really loves ferrets. Nia also has a shit ton of ferrets. I don't have a ferret because they're illegal here. But combining my efforts with Ed, who you've seen in chat as I'm a Pokemon master, we've created a race of battle ferrets. And we're planning a one-shot where everyone is playing a battle ferret. That's going to be our big January charity stream. So definitely want you guys to tune in for that. We'll announce the exact date when we get a bit closer, but yeah, second half of the month is a pretty solid bet.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Anything else you guys have in the works that you want to highlight?
You're gonna have to check my Twitter because it's
That you remember,
filling
Fox.
up.
Something you want to promote.
I do some disability advocacy stuff for Roll for Fun, and then on Feather Fall Tabletop in March, I'm doing 2 different one-shots. One which is a game that I have never played before, which is called The Burning Wheel.
Ooh, I've heard of that.
Right.
Yeah, sounds fun.
And it's gonna be really interesting because I get to be the chaotic one in the group because why not? And then there's another one shot in there, and then I've got some other things that are still being finalized on dates. So once those get finalized, I'm just gonna drop a calendar and you guys can look at it.
Type-O,
It's getting busy.
what do you have in the works? Anything coming up that you want to highlight?
Oh, sorry, you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to be running a stream in about 4 weeks. So that'll be something to look forward to. Unfortunately, I will give you more details on after we've worked them out. And the date approaches a little bit closer than a month from now.
Yeah, that's why I was like, you might hear more of Type-O eventually.
Yes. Because I test cameras. Even though, I mean, you all get to see my face, but it just have to do with my voice. I'm sorry.
I hope they can grin and bear it.
I can
It's
hear
gonna be
the
a
eyes
terrible
rolling
loss.
in the back of their heads.
Alright, so that's what we've got planned, both with the channel and what our wonderful guests have lined up. Again, next stream is going to be tomorrow, fingers crossed, where we'll be doing a Tavern Talks that is all about wizards. Yeah. Sorry, I was wondering what it was.
Don't you lie, my voice is amazing and I've been told that multiple times throughout my life.
We are going to be chucking a host to a wonderful person who is currently playing Red Dead Redemption, and I need to learn how to type out their username because it's complicated. Alright, sending you wonderful people on. I hope you have a fantastic day. It's been wonderful, but for now, we are out.